everyone to the standards meeting on Wednesday the 27th of January 2021. I'm Simon Afsal, the chair. Before we proceed any further, I'm going to request that Phil, on my behalf, will read out a statement because we are on a live Zoom virtual meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just I'll read the statements out now. This meeting has been held virtually in accordance with Part 2 of the Local Authorities and Police and Crime Panels Regulations 2020 and the Council's Supplementary Council Procedure Rules. In summary, the regulations were brought in as a response to the coronavirus epidemic. They removed the requirement for members to be physically present in a room. They allow us to debate, participate and vote through remote video conferencing whilst observing the social distancing measures needed to restrict the spread of the virus. Can we ask members and officers to observe the following principles? Please mute your microphone and turn off your video at all times, unless the chair calls upon you to speak. Remember to mute your microphone and turn off your video again when you have finished. And indicate at the start of the meeting if you wish to speak and through the Teams chat channel, and the chair will ask, at their discretion, will ask you to contribute and according to the demands of the agenda. In terms of voting, the votes will be determined by consensus. If there's no consensus, voting will be carried out by a roll call. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Phil, for that. Very kind of you. Just welcome, obviously, everybody. It's our first meeting of January 2021, so a very happy belated New Year if I haven't wished you one already. Could I obviously welcome anybody? I wonder if Miranda is there today. Miranda, our new independent person, and I'd obviously like to welcome Miranda if she is here. And then, before I proceed, any apologies that need to be noted?
Yes, we received apologies from Alan Eastwood and Roy Davis.
Thank you for that. Okay, if move on to item 2, any declarations of interest on the item today? Any of the items?
None have been received.
Okay, thank you. If we move on to the minutes of the previous meeting, I don't propose we go through them line by line. Some, I believe, will crop up further on. So can I just call upon first members to agree the minutes if they were present?
Agreed.
Resources a correct record, Chair.
Thank you. Thank
Seconded.
you. Thank you very much. Any matters arising from those minutes for the moment that aren't covered later on?
Yeah, if they're not covered, it's just Neil. About the calling, we said that we would discuss it, but I can't see it on the minutes.
Okay, we will be coming to that, I believe. David, am I correct in that? We did discuss that.
Yeah, if I could ask Assad to just come in there, you'll just update where we're up to in relation to making the arrangements.
Okay, thank you, Chair. What we are going to do is we will be preparing a report for Policy and Corporate Resources Committee, and in that committee, I think the chair and I think Councillor Connor, who are also members of that committee, will feed back on sort of standards and sort of ethical issues. So if you can just wait for that report to be considered by the Policy and Corporate Resources Committee.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I'd like to thank everybody for putting the effort in to do it, because it was a difficult time for all of us, like I said. So I appreciate the officers doing all that, and for Kevin and for you as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Any other matters arising that you feel, if you're not sure, obviously ask the question, and if it is covered later, Dave and I will clarify if it is. No? Okay, David and Phil, could you please just keep an eye on the chat as well? If we could possibly put a cue in the chat or raise your hand if you're on the live screen. Ideally, if we can keep the screens and sound off while others are speaking, just to avoid any background noise, because I do appreciate it's quite difficult to hear for the members of the public if we all have our speakers on at the same time. So just that's a quick reminder. So if we go on to the next item, any declarations of interest? Or have I already asked that? Yes, sorry, that's me. I think. We'll go on to item 4, which is the local government ethical standards review and the complaints form and website that we all asked at the last meeting to explain to us. So I'll hand over to David at this point.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the report that is in front of you is the summary report now, which brings forward all the actions that were recommended and agreed at the last meeting of the committee. So you will see there, and also attached as appendices, the bullet points which cover the different aspects that the Standards Committee wished us to introduce. So basically, we were asked to schedule the converting of the complaints form into an e-form that could be completed online or downloaded for completion and emailing later. That is now in process, and Phil will demonstrate that shortly. The website, including a general launch page on the website with a flow chart, that we add as few possible clicks as possible to get to the form or the complaints form, to add a section on the desired outcome from the complaint in relation to the complaints form, to explain on the website potential outcomes to complaints and ask the complainant in completing the form to indicate what their desired outcome would be, to provide on the website a reference to key timescales, and provide reference that if a complaint made directly to the monitoring officer can be done, even if it's not on a form, as long as the key information is included. So at that point, Chair, with your agreement, if I could ask Phil if you would just demonstrate now by going on the website, share his screen, so that you can see those changes and where they are.
Thank you, Phil. That'd be great. Thank you. Phil, we can't hear you.
Sorry. Can you see what I'm
Yes,
what
we
I'm sharing there? Right,
We
great.
can see
So,
and hear you now.
I'm just going to
completely.
thank you. I'm just joining the count. So this is the view that people would see, and this is the way I would go in about it. So I'll just type in complaints, see what comes up. So we'll click on that, and then if we scroll down, we can see there, just here where I've got the cursor, making a complaint about a councillor. It explains that there's going to be e-form available very soon, which we've seen a demonstration of today, which looks very good, and that should be ready in about maybe a week or so's time. But if we click on this here now, as David says, it's the one click to the suite of documents that's there now. If we go to the complaint form starters, this is currently what we've got there, and it can be typed in and you know, downloaded and filled in. But like I said, the e-form will be there shortly, so you can get there quite quickly on that one. And then in the same area, so they can see everything in the same time. You've got this document here, arrangements for dealing with complaints about the code of conduct for members. So that helps the person who's going to complain on the process there. There's a flow chart which explains the route and how it will be dealt with and resolved. And then the complaint form, which I've just showed you there, the timescales document, which gives you the details there. Hopefully you can see that okay. And we've got one more document, potential outcomes for your complaint, because I know that was discussed at the last meeting also, and that outlines you know, what can happen. It could be no further action, it could be informal resolution, or it could be referred, and then there's the various outcomes that could come from it there. Chair.
Thank you. Is there anything else you want to say, Phil, on that, or David and Assad, before I bring in the members?
No, hopefully the committee will see that we've taken on board all the recommendations, and we can now see that people can do it by 1 or 2 clicks. They can get straight to the complaints form, and as Phil touched on before, we've seen a demonstration this afternoon of what the e-form will look like, and it's just like if you're reporting, you know, you want to book something on say for book an appointment at the tip or book other appointments with the council. It's all using the same single process.
Okay. Before I ask any questions on my own, please thank you for everybody in the teams, various teams, digital teams who've done all this for us. That's absolutely amazing. So thank you to them. Any questions from members or even our independent persons or comments? Does anybody wish?
There's Sylvia, Chair.
Sylvia, could you bring yourself in? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's just to say, obviously, we'd had the opportunity of examining those forms prior to tonight's meeting because they were sent out with the agenda. And I think they're first class, they're easy to read. We were already aware of the timescales and things from, I think, when we were first appointed councillors, those of us who bothered to plough through the long constitution documents and so on. But for members of the public, I think it's excellent. So I'm very content with those. So I will be happy to move the A, B, C and D as they've been presented to us tonight, you know, about the forms.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments or thoughts? I think Zainab, is that you wanted to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just to echo what Sylvia was saying. I do agree that the forms look really good, and I think the web form will be really helpful because it just makes it easier should anybody want to obviously make a complaint. It's just making it easier for people to do that. So I think the web form will be a great addition. So thanks to all those involved.
Thank you,
That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Hi, it's Paul Fletcher.
Hi, Paul.
Just a comment, really. I've obviously read through the information that was sent out, but how do we keep the complainant fully abreast of what's going on and when it's going on or not going on?
Yeah,
can that
sure.
be done through the website as well, or will it be done separately?
What we do with that is that the website takes you to the point where the form is acknowledged and acknowledged in receipt, and it comes through to myself as monitoring officer, and then following the timescales that are in that document, it's part of my role then to make sure that we keep the complainant and the subject member informed within the timescales as set out in the arrangements document, and as I've also summarised in the timescales document that's also available on the website.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
David, I've got a similar follow-up question. One just arose generally today about another matter, and that's when we do have an e-system, which is fantastic. What about those that where they struggle and they still wish to make a complaint? We will still have a mechanism to email out the forms or post them out on request, should that occur?
Yes, that's correct. We do. I will still have we call a Word version or a PDF version. We did discuss this on the call today because of obviously the e-form assumes that everybody's got an email address. But in the event that there is somebody who just writes in and says, I've got a complaint about Councillor X, if they've not put enough information in that for me to be able to deal with that complaint, I would simply write back to them with the form and say, would you please fill in the missing details? What I tend to do when I get those sort of inquiries is that I'll try and fill in as much as I can from the letter that they've given me, and then just ask people to fill in the gaps. Sometimes it's obvious things like, can you give me a telephone number so I can ring you and talk through, or can you just give me a bit more information? You said this incident was seen by somebody, but you've not told me who it was, so it's difficult for me to look into it. So absolutely, we do have that option available to us.
That's great. Thank you, David. And just one more follow-up, because nobody else in the group's indicated. If they do, please do. Is the question of general complaints, because whilst we're dealing with obviously member complaints and councillors, that same mechanism can take you to complain about a service that you've received, presumably. And it's a different process, but is that also similar?
Yes, it is similar, and it's probably worth just inviting Assad, who manages the complaints team, who could just sort of say a few words about that, if you wouldn't mind, Assad. Are you muted, Assad?
I think you might be muted.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Sorry, yeah, the complaints team would look at complaints in relation to service provision. So where anybody has a sort of experienced sort of dissatisfaction on some kind of on a service provision, that is the sort of mechanism and the route to go through. And we've got different policies. First of all, we've got general corporate policy, which deals with things like planning, land matters, license matters, bids, etc., etc. And we have a specific one for actual children and adults. So we've got 3 main policies for that, and they're all on the website. And also the complaints, I think, in terms of people reporting feedback, you can do that through the web. There's a phone call provision as well, and I think there's also a sort of a web chat thing where people can just send in something sort of electronically, their query as well, which we get in a sort of a central mailbox.
Thank you, Assad. Any follow-up questions that arose because of the questions? No? And if not, can I thank you everybody for their fantastic hard work, and also obviously the members here for some of the feedback through this mechanism and through our, private behind the scenes conversations as well around what should be in here. So thank you, everyone. Could I bring in now David again for item 5, which is member training update.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As previously requested, I've been monitoring the take-up of the key member training this year. As members will be aware, we've had to, because of circumstances, although we were moving in the direction of all e-based training, we had to sort of move 100% in that direction because of obviously the COVID situation. So in this report, I update on the latest position in relation to the members who have completed the training, and there's a small number who have yet to complete. So basically what we have got at the moment is that we have got 5 councillors who've yet to complete the programme. A couple of these have had reported some IT issues, which we all know can happen from time to time. And we've also had a councillor who's not been able to complete for medical reasons, so we're able to look at alternative solution, and we will get that resolved. We've got a couple of councillors who've yet to provide a reason for not completing the training, so hopefully what I would want from tonight's meeting is just your confirmation that I can write out to those members again and ask them to get this completed so that we complete the full set. The training was in three. It was three main parts. One was the civil contingencies update, so that's the one that gives you all the information around things which are very topical at the moment, of course, whether it's about bad weather, i.e. flooding, snowfall, all the key contact numbers, all the key information that members need should we get events like that, as well as some general wider information about civil contingencies. So that was the civil contingencies one. There is the information governance training, and that's the one which covers all things to do with ensuring that personal information and information that is handled by members is kept safe in terms of use of the systems, use of the computers. And then there was what we call the dojo training. This is the cybersecurity training. So this is the one that ensures that when members are using systems, and of course we're all using systems more than we've ever done before, they are safe in doing so, and this equips members to be able to surf safely, to use the internet safely, and so on and so forth. The other thing in the report, Chair, that you'll see is the reference to the equality and diversity training and workshop. This was originally arranged as an in-person event but had to be postponed. We are still hopeful that we might be able to get that within this municipal year, so it's just to note that we have got that pending to actually try and run that event before the end of this municipal year. Circumstances, of course, providing generally because of the COVID situation. So that's the report, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you for that, David. I'll come in with my comments after I've put it to members. I've got Ron indicating that he'd like to ask a question.
Yeah, David, of the five, do you know, have you got the information to hand, whether it's a case that they haven't done any of the courses or that they've only, say, missed one or two? Because I can understand it if, you know, you've done two of the courses and you haven't finished the third one because you had a computer problem or you were ill. But if people haven't started any of the three, that will be more indicative of a bigger problem for those individuals. So perhaps if you could ask that. And I thought at the last meeting, I did advocate the idea that anybody who hadn't completed should be named. And I would have thought that would be appropriate for the two that haven't given any explanation as to why they haven't finished the course, you know, the courses. So would you be prepared to name them here, or? I mean, because we've given people lots of opportunities, haven't we? And we reminded people. And I mean, there must be an end of the line somewhere. He says confidently that he's done all the courses. It would be funny if it was me. But no, it isn't me. I know, I'll pass them. But they, you know, it would be, you know, we've got to have some sort of naming and shaming, really, because otherwise, you know, if people just keep ignoring the fact that they're not doing mandatory courses, it's a bit poor, isn't it, really?
Any other comments before I come in and before you answer, David, on naming people?
Hi, it's Paul Fletcher. Hello?
Come in, Paul. Okay, sorry, yeah, you're in, Paul.
Okay. We've had this discussion on several occasions in the last couple of years about what does mandatory mean. If it's mandatory, it's mandatory. There's no excuse for not doing it, really. And people are not able to provide any reason whatsoever if you're not undertaking more than one course, then it's time something was done about it, isn't it?
Yep, thanks for that, Paul. I think Neil, you are indicating, or you did raise your hand because your video's on.
Can you hear me? You're muted, Neil. We can now. Yeah. Just knock your mute off again, Neil.
Can you hear me?
That's it. We can hear you now. Yeah.
I haven't done the training because I had IT problems, but I mean, quite openly admit it in front of everybody. But for a modern day operation, I'm not so sure about naming and shaming people is a criteria that anyone should accept in a modern day workplace. There are methods, emails, but naming and shaming, would we name and shame an officer? I don't think so. So I'm not convinced of naming and shaming in a modern society of a modern day workplace with mental health problems and all the things that I hear from Labour councillors. But now you want to name and shame people. I'm a bit dubious of that one, to say the least. And I'll admit I've not done the training because of IT problems. I'm the first to admit it. I'll admit it in the public. It's a public meeting. But yeah, I'm concerned about that.
Thank you, Neil. I think I've got Sylvia next, indicating. Sylvia, your mic's off now.
Yeah.
Now it's on. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Yes, I'm concerned too. The two people that have not responded at all, I would certainly have to suggest that, you know, that David be authorised to write in the strongest possible terms. First of all, it's a distinct disregard for the committee, and you know, you can't continue like that. These are grown-up people. If there are valid reasons for it, well then so be it, but not to offer anything is just not good. Now, I did notice that David has said two people were unwell in the report. Can I ask, and I would never ask for anybody to attempt to breach any patient confidentiality at all, but unless it's a serious illness, if it's somebody that was just unwell at a particular time, I do know that David had extended the time for people to complete the courses till the beginning of November. And I'm just wondering if you could update us on those aspects. If it's not a serious illness, we can all feel not well at a particular time, but what's the most recent information that you've had in that respect?
David, is there anything further you want to add without disclosing any competencies at this stage? Because I haven't got anybody.
Yeah, what I can say in relation to that, I can confirm for members that in relation to the medical issues, I had absolutely no qualms about that, and I can assure you that it was perfectly reasonable in terms of the circumstances for that individual. So there was absolutely no problem with that. In relation to the other comments that Ron has said, and that Neil and Sylvia said, I would be naturally reluctant to go into naming and shaming, because I think the more that we can encourage people to take up the training, because it is genuinely there for their benefit, and I don't want to see it as a big stick thing. That having been said, some of this training is really important, and it is quite disappointing, and I can understand the disappointment of the committee that people haven't done this yet. So I'm quite happy with the authorization of the committee to write in the strongest possible terms directly to those individuals on your behalf, and if that could be endorsed by the committee, I think that would be perfectly reasonable to do.
Thank you, David. If I could, I don't see anybody else indicating. If I could make a couple of comments on this as well. My natural instinct around naming and shaming is not where I want it to go to. I agree with you, David. The first, it has to be proportionate. So the first thing, as Sylvia said, if there are underlying well-being issues, we do need to check those out, particularly if people have made no attempt at contact. So I would encourage two steps really to contact. They can, if people want me to contact them, I can do that. David, I certainly would agree that you write, and make it clear that mandatory training must be attended. It's a legal requirement for all staff and officers and councillors, and therefore we should be in line, as per Neil's point, around in line with what staff are expected to do. So that's the first part. The second part, we also need to be mindful of the well-being. The third part, practicalities and IT. If that is the barrier, then can we look at a per version of PowerPoints sent out to some of those members? Because I do understand I had some difficulties myself with my own treatment and eyesight. I couldn't read anything online for a few weeks. So, you know, so I can understand there might be some very genuine barriers. But having said that, it's a proportionate, fair approach. And ultimately, if we need to go to the relevant party political group, I think that's our next step after you've written to them if they still don't respond. That's the process and order. I believe somebody has indicated questioning. I think that's Jim Casey.
Hi,
speaking.
Yeah. I think it would be perfectly reasonable for David also to contact the party whips. I mean, I do know. I mean, I had a few issues as well, and David did contact me, and to say he's relentless is an understatement. So I can only imagine what he's gone through to actually contact the two that are doing a no-show. So I think for him to contact the party whips is reasonable in these circumstances.
Yeah, I agree, Jim. Thank you. Any other?
Chair, just the clarification. Is it 3 people that you need to contact now? We heard about the 2 that have not made any contact, but is there a 3rd one that you need to contact? We were told that there were 2 unwell.
No, to Chair, if I can answer
Yeah,
Sylvia's question. Yeah, there are 2 who I need to contact directly who have not responded. There was 1 that we're resolving in relation to other issues as set out in the report. And there were 2 who were experiencing some IT issues, and I know that their work was being done with the IT team to try and resolve those particular issues, because those were actually to do with connections to the system, which would actually limit your ability to do it if it keeps kicking you out or it won't let you in. So it's a 2, 2 and a 1 in terms of the 5. Okay. So I will follow up where they're up to with the IT, because those people who are on the IT ones tend to be part way through or have started, because I'll need to answer that question as well. There are a couple who haven't started at all, and there's a couple who started but have not been able to finish.
Thank you, David. I mean, in some ways, the numbers, it is relevant. That it's good that they're not high numbers, which is, I think, really positive. But I do go back to the point, we want to make any training something that people do learn from, that it doesn't become a tick box exercise that people go through, tick it, it looks like they've done it, and then they're not engaging with the process. So, you know, it's the balance of the 2, but at the same time, giving David enough tools to chase up and follow up on people. Is there any other? I think Councillor Cornett Solomon, you put a comment in. Do you want to come in with that, or do you want me to just read it out for you?
Chair, either way, it's fine.
Yeah,
all I was saying is our IT lately in the last few weeks has not been very best. A lot of people have struggled with.
Yeah.
A week ago, we had a lot of problems. So with all that in mind, people, you know, taking that into consideration, I think there are people who've got issues with IT. Even today, we can see that ourselves. Yeah. So jumping on that would be a bit, you know, a bit unfair. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I think I'm getting a consensus, David. You write, find out if there's any underlying issues, any issues with training. If people want to write to me about any other issues, if they feel they need to, that's also myself and David, I think, are open to be corresponded with. Is that, I don't want to speak for you. Where are we? I can't see you there.
Yeah, that's okay. Yes, yeah, that's absolutely fine, Chair. And as indicated, I'm happy also to contact party whips and just to see if we can get people up to the 100%.
Thank you. Before we move on for this item, Derek and I have got a couple of updates that we'd like to, again, I think Sylvia's commenting. So Sylvia, do you want to come in before I go on to the next.
I've written it on if you can read there.
The timescales to complete the outstanding training, David. Have we got any timescales?
Yeah, I suggest that if we meet again, your committee meets again in early March. So if I was to turn around to say to people to get it completed as soon as possible, but with the objective of me being able to report that 100% to you in March, that would seem to be a reasonable for this municipal year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one more question? You know, just as we do with the meeting attendance, is there anything online, which is it's kind of a form of naming and shaming, isn't it? Around who's attended what? Is there a attendance record? Is there a record of mandatory training? Obviously, only the ones without the health issues, I would argue, should be put on there, because if it's a genuine issue, I don't think it should be put against you.
Chair, if I can answer the first part of that question, which is in relation to the training. At the moment, we don't put the member training records online in respect of that. But if I could invite Phil to come in around the mod.gov records on meeting attendance, Phil.
Yep. Phil, I think your mic may be off.
Yeah, sorry, I was just responding to some emails at the same time. Sorry about that. Sorry, I missed that slightly. Did you say about
it was about Phil? It was about the records of councillors' meeting attendance and where they are kept. I said they're on modern.gov. Is that correct?
Yes, it is correct. So when the minutes are done on the system after a meeting, before you can produce the minutes, you have to update the attendance details. So that is covered on there. So it is on the website, and you can find out who attended and their percentage of meetings attended and things like that.
Thank you.
All right.
No, thanks for that, Phil. Sorry to you carry on.
Carry on. It's called multitasking. Sorry.
As long as you're working, I don't mind.
Yeah, I was definitely working.
Right. I was joking, by the way. I know you're always working really hard. Is there no more comments on this particular aspect of training update? Because Derek and I do need to introduce something else to the committee in a moment.
Chair, I think me and Kevin.
Kevin? Oh, sorry. Yeah, Kevin. Sorry. I'm just creating names out of nowhere, aren't I? That should be a training that I need. Kevin, do you want to come in, or shall I come in with this item?
Well, if you just come in, and
that's fine.
And then I'll jump in a bit later, if you don't mind.
No, of course not. Thanks, Kevin. Just for everybody else's information, Kevin and I have had a number of discussions. Some have come from other meetings, such as corporate parents, and members have suggested around some training around safeguarding and neglect, given that we are all primarily operating remotely from the home, but we still need to be mindful of our safeguarding duties. So one of the suggestions was, rather than having online training, given the problems we've had, that we try and create some kind of briefing where discussion can occur and the relevant leads can come along and speak about safeguarding. We can ask them the questions. That was one element. The other element was the appropriate use of social media. And again, same reasons, similar reasons. The last time we had such training was 2 years ago, when I first became chair of the Standards Committee. And it was a very useful briefing, again, discussion, because it's not a kind of a black and white area. It's about context, it's about perceptions, it's how we then use social media appropriately. And so again, invite a few people to do a couple of talks, maybe present a few case studies, and we can have that discussion. And it's not political. That's what I want to make out. It's not a political issue. It's about best practice for anybody holding public office, or any member, whether it's a police officer, teacher, who's got social media platforms. It probably benefit everybody. So that's really where we're coming from then. And Kevin, I don't know if you want to come in there at that point.
Yeah, certainly. That to me, this is a better idea for training than the electronic. One of the problems with people not completing, I think. And I know at least one councillor who is not very au fait with the electronic system and probably, you know, finds themselves out of depth sometimes with electronic training. The other fault with electronic training is that you don't get any feedback. So in other words, you're just answering the question, you're pressing a button, you're not getting feedback. Doing what we're suggesting, or what has been suggested, is more suitable, I think, for those who would prefer to get feedback. And if you're getting feedback, you know that then people are listening, they are learning, and they're taking it in. So yeah, I mean, I would recommend this, you know, and I think we should look a bit more closely at how we're presenting the training. You know, what is suitable for electronic and what is suitable more for briefing.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. Any quick comments, thoughts before? Hopefully you agree and support this, that we do need it as a briefing rather than an electronic version of something that can be quite difficult for some.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry, I can't see who that is.
Sorry, I didn't put the cue in.
Oh, it's Sylvia. Sylvia, sorry.
Yes, just thinking about the cyber training that we did and all the aspects there. I have the list actually in front of me. You know, when we went through what's personal data and all the usual password scams, internet security, online services and file sharing, but social media was a separate aspect contained within that training as well. So we've already done that. That was one of the topics in there.
Sylvia, if I may just quickly come in on that. Yes, we did do that. I did it as well. But what it doesn't cover is the whole issue of perceptions, context, inequality, making comments online, use of Twitter as members, and how we manage that dialogue in the public domain, because it is a new arena. You may have seen it with Trump and some of his tweets and what's happened with Twitter. Obviously, that's an obvious example of what should not happen, but there are a lot of similar examples of different nature. Some fall into the arena of freedom of speech and generally sharing an opinion. Others will veer into bullying, harassment, potentially victimisation, undermining council colleagues, whatever category. And I think that is something a computer system probably can't tell you, because it's not simply black and white on that one. It's a little bit more complicated. And that's really where we were coming from, to have a briefing, learn from a couple of case studies and ask some of those questions in a safe setting, you know. And I'm sure even that 1 hour won't cover it all, but at least it's a starting point.
Simon, I don't know if you can hear me. It's Miranda here.
Hi, Miranda. Yes, of course.
Hello.
I couldn't see you. Thanks for coming in there. Hi, Miranda. I can hear you.
Okay, I can't actually join the team meeting because of the software thing. So we'll double check it before the next meeting. But so far as social media and the importance of social media training and standards is concerned, I'm sure that firstly, I'm not teaching anybody in Blackburn how to suck eggs, because you've been sucking eggs for many years and I know that you know all of this stuff. But having recently retired from a neighbouring Met district, the bulk of complaints that happen in respect of members and have very serious consequences come out of social media activity, and that is irrespective of party. So I think probably if you're planning to do more work in terms of social media training and engaging with people about appropriate use and all the rest of it, then that is something that I think you would find incredibly useful. I think the other thing is that it would be very helpful to understand that I don't know if we will have elections this year, but running up to an election, people's use of social media is often intemperate, and it is worth having the training in advance. Thank you.
Thank you for that useful comment, Miranda. I have a Ron indicating. I can't see anybody else at this stage, but please do come in.
I just wondered, you know, who would give the training? Would we just do it amongst ourselves, or would we engage somebody like Northwest Employers who've got a lot of experience of that sort of thing? I mean, I just wonder whether sometimes being told things by somebody external, whether that has more impact on people. I don't know. I just a thought.
David, Kevin, do you want to come in there, because we did discuss who briefly, didn't we? Kevin, I think your sound's dipped out. It is on your mic. I think the IT is not very good, potentially. Oh, we've lost you completely, David. No, sorry, Kevin. David, would you?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
whilst we
Kevin,
waited for Kevin to resolve the sound issues.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah, it's an option really for the committee. We have obviously we've got officers who work with social media in our communications team day in, day out, and are very capable of presenting some of that information. Obviously, I've also got Assad as our council solicitor, who can talk through some of the legal pitfalls in relation to social media. And then I think also there is the added element, which I think is what you're referring to generally into the introduction of this, Chair, and that is to use some real examples from other local authorities from a member perspective and discuss those and engage with those and show where those pitfalls can actually lead. As Miranda's very astutely aware and has set out for you, this is a growing area of member complaints. So therefore it is so very easy at the moment for people to assume that social media is in some way sometimes private, or it's never going to get out, or if I delete it, it's gone. There's no such thing of it as it's deleted and it's gone. So sometimes it's about also going back to the start, and again, with that, we've got people who can say, right, well, do you remember what settings you put on Facebook when you first set up? Have you checked them recently? Do you remember what settings you put on your Twitter account? Who can access it? You can go right back to the basics. And with that, Ron's absolutely right. We can engage external support, or we can provide that from the officers of the council to support that.
Yeah, I'll come back to that. I've got a couple more questions, unless Kevin, did you want to come in now? I wasn't sure. Yeah,
I mean, hopefully the sound is
it is.
Yeah, the network keeps knocking me in and out of the meeting, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, to be local is better. You can tailor it to your own local needs and your own local experiences. When you get someone from outside, I agree with Ron, you know, perhaps they have the expertise, but it's not, sometimes it's not relevant to local. So I prefer the local input rather than hiring someone from outside.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. I think, I don't know if Ron, is that another question, or you've already asked, haven't you? Then I've got Zainab next, if Ron, you've already spoken, I think.
Thank you, Chair. It's more of a comment really, but I do think the topic that you're bringing up around context, I think it's really important. And I think just for me, I think over this last 12 months, 11, 12 months, I think the lockdowns have impacted people, and I've noticed, because I'm on various social media platforms, is there's been a real change in people's comments, and you know, it's something for members to really be aware of. Is, you know, you may respond to something in a, you know, in a genuine, your intention is genuine, but it could, you know, really quickly spiral out of control. So I think this briefing or training format, I think, would be really helpful, you know, for members to really understand the impact it can have. So I would support it. Or look forward to seeing it.
Thank you. Just before David comes back in, yeah, we did discuss bringing in external, and given the time frame, some of it we did think we've got local examples. We don't want to make this a party political issue. This is an issue for, regardless of who you are, whether you're a member of staff in the council or whether you're a councillor. Obviously, being a councillor, we are never off duty in theory. There is no such thing as a private WhatsApp group, which a lot of people do feel completely misunderstand this idea. Well, it's a private group, therefore I can say what I want. No, not necessarily. It can be classed as an extension of the workplace. You know, like if you wanted, we did toy with the idea, because I do run training with police officers via the College of Policing and colleagues around what we call the politics, not party politics, but politics of engagement. Unfortunately, we can't do that in an online session. Plus, it makes it very difficult without getting personal if it's one of the members. But we want to jointly, Kevin and I, introduce a session, set a standard that we are technically never off duty, and whether we say it on the phone or on social media platforms, we really need to think about what we say, the context of what we say, and also the impact, the potential impact. You know, who would have thought years ago we would be debating, you know, 2 years ago, that people would be offended about a vaccine, and now we know there are arguments around vaccines going on social media. So these things are really important, so we've got to really clear up what should we do, what we can't do. If people have examples that they want to discuss, send them in, and then we can send them in to David, and then locally our lawyers and Assad can come together and explore those issues, and hopefully in a neutral manner where we're not targeting any one particular person but discussing openly together. I hope that clears up what we're trying to achieve, and what we're not trying to do is replicate the training we've already had. That's the main thing. David, Assad, anybody want, and Kevin, if you want to come back in, please do so.
Okay, Chair, from what you said there, what I would pick it up from what you said and from the discussion, we would look to put together an hour's briefing where we would roughly go cut it into quarters, with a session around some of the basics of social media, some of the basic niceties, how it should be used, and so on and so forth, with a bit of a question and answer session. We'd have a session which would relate to some of the pitfalls, and then we'll have a session in relation to some of the legal parts of it, and then probably round up with a session around how to positively use social media in order to support members. There is a lot of information out there which we can supplement, and I could recirculate the links to a lot of good information that the LGA provide, so I'll weave that into the session as well. But I think, as you've touched on there, ideally, if any members of the committee could give me real live examples, I don't need to, not real names please, but real sorts of things that cause you concern or have caused you concern that you've seen, or this, that and the other, then myself and Assad can have a look at those and weave that in, along with Angia in our communications team, into a good briefing session where we're talking about things which are real to you because they've happened to you, or they relate to an experience that you and other members will have had.
Thank you for that. Do any of our independent persons wish to comment? No. Miranda, I'm just conscious, I know you can't indicate, so just jump in if any of you have any comments, Paul and Miranda. Yeah.
Yes, I've got scary numbers of examples. I'll talk separately.
Thank you. I'm sure you do.
I've recently, until recently, for other colleagues, I was a city solicitor in Salford, and part of the Greater Manchester Chief Legal Officers. We shared quite a lot of war stories, and so across GM there have been a number of concerns with regard to social media. The other thing is, I better declare an interest. I'm also an associate with Northwest Employers, and they do have a very good set of learning and development for members around some of the social media things. And sometimes it's actually easier for members to do some of these things in political groups because you can get a slightly different dynamic going. I'm not saying that would be needed for Blackburn with Darwin, but it can be quite useful. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Miranda. That'd be really useful. And I'll declare a kind of a friendly interest. We knew Miranda and I worked together on the police authority, so we know a lot of these issues. I think. Paul, is there anything you wish to say?
I think the only thing I'll probably mention is, without sounding too controversial, is that it's not always what's said, but in the language that's used to be saying something. And some people on social media might not understand a particular language, or be aware of what's being said in a particular language, but at the same time they might be finding that without knowing it, that they're suffering some abuse of some form on social media.
I agree. And that's the context, isn't it, that we need to be mindful of. So no, thank you for that, Paul. And yes, Zainab put in, who can we email? Please do email to David, myself, Assad and Kevin, of course, because we're trying to make this a non-political issue. So no names. And of course, if it is something that needs serious intervention, then we do it through the proper channels, but as a generic set of examples, that would be really useful. Thank you, Zainab. I think that's so. The proposal is that we could have one briefing related to safeguarding, but not necessarily just about scams, but this is about dealing with issues that might crop up that we need to refer on and be aware of. And the second, obviously, the appropriate use of social media platforms or any public engagement, should we say. I think that's that, and one briefing in February and one in March. That's what we'd propose. I hope there's support for that, and we'll, if there's any burning opposition, please do indicate. I take that as no burning opposition. Any comments, obviously, around how we do it, what we do, please do email. If that's that, I'm going to move on. I don't think there's anybody. Ron, you're typing. Is it in relation to, right, okay, will it be mandatory? David, I would like it to be, I think the safeguarding one, mandatory. I'd like it to be mandatory, but that's not, I have to check with the lawyers whether it should be.
Yeah, we would normally have the safeguarding one would normally contain as part of the safeguarding training that all members do. The issue, of course, has been is we've not been able to do that training this year because of the COVID arrangements. But previously, the committee have endorsed that all members should do safeguarding training. I think the reason for that is it has been accepted for many years by councillors. It's just the nature of the work that councillors do out in the community. How do you spot some of the safeguarding signs and issues? How do you report? How do you deal with circumstances you may be presented with on the doorstep and things like that? So that one has regularly been defined as a mandatory course. In relation to the social media one, it is obviously it's at the discretion of the committee. My suggestion would be that most members would be actively encouraged to do this. It is the way and increasing, and as Miranda has said and a couple of other members have alluded to, this is a growing area in terms of where people can get it wrong. They can get it brilliantly right, and we've all seen how campaigns worked on social media can have real positive impacts, you know, whether it's to do with getting our testing numbers up, improvements to getting information out in relation to vaccinations, but we've seen the negatives, have you touched on, Chair, in relation to that as well. So it is a matter for the committee. When we describe mandatory, it's effectively a recommendation to the council forum to make it mandatory. There isn't a legal requirement as such. It's just the council saying to itself as councillors, really, you should all attend this.
Okay, thank you for that, David. So I would make it a strong recommendation. Obviously, because it is a set time, will it be recorded for members to watch back if should they not be available? I don't want this to be the go-to solution for people, but should they not be available in the times, will it be recorded that they can watch back, David?
Yes, that can be facilitated on a Teams recording of the event. Yes.
Thank you for that.
Chair, it's Paul Fletcher.
Hi,
Can
Paul.
I just make one final point, I think, really,
Sure.
that 2 or 3 years ago now, David will remember, and some other of you will remember, that I chaired a review of some aspect of social media that had been made by one of our members, and a lot of it boiled down to the meaning of 1 or 2 words only. And when we had the translations of those words, we got different translations of those words. So it can be very difficult to understand exactly what's being meant and what isn't being meant.
Thank you. And that'll probably be formally part of what we try and cover to be clear. And again, local context will be key to that as well. I think that's pretty much on there. Just going back to the equality and diversity or the value and difference inclusion training, we have agreed that that wouldn't be a online program. That will be a face-to-face, really, hands-on case studies, left alone, resolve them, come back. So whether that does get done in this municipal year, I'm kind of doubtful. It may be that we have to run different sessions to accommodate that. The numbers, because we may have limits on numbers that can gather if we are able to gather, of course. So David, if that doesn't happen in this municipal year, can I confirm that this is something we will carry on post? Obviously I may not be chair at that point, so depending on what happens with the elections.
Yes, Chair, what I can do is I can obviously bring to the attention of the first meeting in the new municipal year that this is been reported through this municipal year as a piece of training and an event that has been primarily, we've done a lot of work, the planning, a lot of the material and that is already prepared and ready to go as it was coming up to March last year when everything was put on hold. So I will be able to report to the first meeting in the new municipal year that training is outstanding, and it would clearly be then for the standards committee then to adopt it into the work programme for 2021-22.
No, thank you. Thanks for confirming that. If there's no more questions, I will propose we move on to the last item. I believe it is the last item on the agenda, and I hand back to David and Assad on this, I believe, that you will jointly present.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The committee will recall at the previous couple of meetings we've made reference to the the Committee on Standards in Public Life, local government ethical standards, and as the report outlines, this national committee made 15 best practice recommendations to improve public life and the representation, and a benchmark for ethical practice which they expect local authorities should implement. And we were at the process when these came through, we were in the process of reviewing our code of conduct, our local code of conduct for elected members, and also reviewing our local arrangements for handling complaints. That's the document knows as arrangements for dealing with complaints about the code of conduct. But if we just précis that down to, we were reviewing our code and we were reviewing our complaints procedures. So what we said was, we knew that also at the same time, whilst we were due to get these recommendations, the LGA were also due to have a council model code of conduct, which they would be recommending that local councils across the country consider adopting and that would include the recommendations from the Committee on Standards in Public Life as well. So what we have now got ourselves to the position of this evening is having 3 options in respect of the current Code of Conduct and Complaints procedure. So there's 4 really, if you say that we could do nothing and stay absolutely the same. But if we did that, we wouldn't be adopting the 15 best practice recommendations. So the first question for the committee is in respect of recommendation 1 is whether to adopt the 15 best practice recommendations. If it then adopts those, it has got 3 options then to consider, and those are to update the Code of Conduct and our local complaints process, reflecting those the Committee on Standards in Public Life best practice recommendations. And what I've done in Appendix B there is set out how those changes would affect the code and the arrangements.
David, can I just interrupt very quickly? Can just for people, if they don't know what page we're on, page 26 of the pack sets those recommendations out, just for reference while David's speaking. Sorry, sorry to interrupt there. Just thought
no problem, Chair. Thank you. The second option would be to adopt the model Code of Conduct suggested by the LGA in its entirety, sorry, and we would then just need to update the complaints process reflecting those recommendations from the Committee on Standards in Public Life, which refer to complaints processes. Or the third option, which would be to adopt the code with some localized amendments to actually more reflect our local circumstances, and then update the complaints process as in B. At that point, Chair, with your agreement, I'd like to invite Assad to say a few words, particularly around some of the information he's picked up on his networks about the new LGA code.
Thank you. Thanks, David. And yes, Assad.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just the model code which was actually published and adopted in January, a few weeks ago. Since then, I've seen a few articles about monitoring officers across the country giving a sort of a lukewarm response to it, and some of them are not likely to recommend the implementation in their authorities. I think what they're saying is it's not robust enough, and also I think they were expecting other things in the code as well. For example, sanctions as well, which is not there. So a lot of the monitoring officers aren't very happy with what's been sort of adopted by the LGA, and I think on that basis, I think some would be probably just to sort of they would probably just retain their own sort of local code and just make sure that the 15 recommendations are sort of incorporated in there. So that's the kind of sort of noises I'm hearing.
So that's 1A, am I correct? So
yeah, it's the first option. I think it is.
Yeah, the 1A. Yeah.
Because what they're saying is that they think that their own code is more robust.
Okay. Is there anything you want to add on the sanctions, just to elaborate on some of the members who may not have been present at that meeting? I think we had a very detailed discussion, didn't we, about sending feedback?
Yeah, we did send some feedback, and I'm sure lots of other standards committees from across the council would have done the same. But we see at the moment, I think one thing they were hoping for was the power of suspension.
Yeah.
Without any sort of allowances. That was what was recommended. But there seems to be no mention in the model code about it at all. So I think in terms of sanctions, we are as we are now at the moment.
And that's what our committee recommended. We presented that, didn't we, as one of the options we'd like. No, thanks for that, Assad. I think Sylvia wants to come in, and do you want to come back in, Assad, after Sylvia, or are you okay for now? Oh, he's gone. Sylvia.
Thanks, Chair. I do recall having a very lengthy discussion at the meeting prior to this, and I was a little surprised seeing all the detail again from LGA. Having ploughed through everything, and I mean everything, and I think if I'm right on Appendix B, the current pages were the 218 to 236. But anyway, wherever they were, I've read everything thoroughly, and my particular leaning would be, and I open this up for others obviously to make comments, would be to go down the avenue of Appendix B, because we had discussed at great length, as has been previously mentioned by David, the 15 recommendations and so on. And if we went for Appendix B, adopt that with the red, all the red parts as well that we've read in the report that was sent to us today. So my view would be, I'll put that forward, that we adopt the Appendix B with the red parts in there. And I acknowledge some were deleted, you know, on there, but I just throw that into the net to get it started.
Any comments on that before I comment?
Chair, if I could just say, just
Sure.
for clarity, Sylvia, Councillor Liddle there has proposed adoption of 1A, just to confirm that people understand, because it is a complicated report.
Yeah. Well, Sylvia, you said B, didn't you? I'm assuming you mean A.
No, she means Appendix B.
I haven't got the thing, so I don't know how to share the screen, and I haven't got it up.
Well, if I read it out aloud, would that help for members?
Well, just let other members come in. I mean, obviously, if they've read the whole of the reports, they may well have picked other things up.
Sure. I understand that, but I've got nobody indicating for a comment, you see, Sylvia.
Yeah.
I have nobody indicating, and I just want to be clear. I've got now. I can't see who that is. That's Ron. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree with Sylvia really that if we accept the 50, do part 1, which is accept the 15 principles, and then we go down. I think in the spirit of what Sylvia's saying, I agree with David that it is option 1, which means changing both things, and in line with what's the red additions on Appendix B and the deletions on Appendix B. But if that makes sense. So I think having read it myself, I think number 1 and option A would seem to fit the bill.
That's correct. Sorry, it's the use of the term Appendix B. I didn't want to confuse members of the public more than if anybody's watching. I'm being optimistic, but you never know.
Apologies if I got that.
Yeah, no. I
can assure you I read everything thoroughly, so I know in my mind what I was doing. So it wasn't an attempt to mislead anybody. As long as David knows the references I'm making and the appropriate thing. And I think Ron has confirmed there. So sorry about that aspect.
No need to apologise, Sylvia. I just wanted to be clear for whoever may be watching what we're referring to. We might have read it thoroughly and we know it, but I just don't want to make assumptions.
Chair, would it help if I put it on the screen? I could put
yes, please. I think it would. I was going to just say, is it possible to have it on the screen so it's very clear that what we're referring to?
Okay. Just bear with me.
Because there are a number of appendices and we need to be very clear.
Can everybody see this now?
Yeah, I can. I can see your screen.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is Appendix B.
Correct.
So let me just go to the top of Appendix B, so everybody can see it. So this is our code. It's currently adopted. I'll
Yep.
I'll just slowly go down.
And it's showing all the red parts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on a minute. So we've got definitions of bullying,
Yeah.
harassment,
Yes.
victimization.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's it. Is anything else?
I think it's going, what I'm trying to make clear, we know what Appendix B is, which what we're proposing
Yep.
is the options. If you go to the options page, so people know.
You mean the report, the main report?
Yeah, that's page 26
Oh,
of the agenda pack.
26, hang on.
Sorry, I can't share my screen, then I lose the chat sometimes. I can't then.
Just so this is the main report.
Yeah.
And these are the options A.
This is what I'm asking people to make just have a discussion on. And so far, I think we've got 2 people, myself included, going with option 1A. Are there any? I think I don't know if somebody wants to come in. I may have missed somebody's question or indication of comment because the screen's shrunk now. So please do come in.
It's just, hello, can you hear me, Chair?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just to make clarify because the public are hearing.
Yeah.
We still, even if we adopt all of these, it will still give us no more teeth than we've got now. Because we still can't suspend anybody or stop the pay. The public are watching, so I don't want them thinking we're taking on something that's going to give us more teeth, because it's not, is it?
It won't be giving us more teeth, but at least we as a group of members sign up to this, and obviously that gives local people the ability to use this as a tool to submit their complaints should they wish to, and then we can still go through a process. Again, like you said, I don't want to elevate people's expectations. That's why I want it to be very clear. And Assad and David can come in on that as well, because obviously it's one thing that Assad's already expressed his disappointment about, and I share that disappointment. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think to have the sections as we had before the new regime changed, and it's what people wanted, would require change in legislation that to give us those powers.
Thank you for that. I think Ron Scott, oh no, he said cancel my question. So a question, but cancel it. Is that correct, Ron?
Yeah, I was just going to make the same point that Assad made, that we need a change in the law to be able to suspend.
Yeah, it's not of our doing. It's not a lack of trying. I think Sylvia has already alluded, we've gone through this so many times, put in everything we can, define definitions, which is really good practice on our end, but like I said, change of law is required. I think Sylvia's indicated for another question. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Just on the comment that was made by Councillor Slater, in all the information we read today, and I'm sure the officers will be able to tell me, it's actually typed in about not having the desired sanction that Councillor Slater might prefer to have, because this is a national thing, and there's a joint statement issued, isn't there, on a separate page, and isn't it on the bottom line of that statement when it makes reference to not having that sanction? Perhaps the officers can tell me. I'm sure I've read it anyway, certainly.
Yeah. David,
I think it's on the joint statement page.
Yeah, I think, Chair, what we've done is because this was for some time, there has been some confusion when people have been making complaints saying, I want this councillor sacked, I want this councillor suspended, or I want this councillor given a final written warning as if they were an employee. There is no provision currently in legislation which provides for that. So as the councillors have referred to, because of that, the changes that we're making, if you go with what's proposed here, will keep us in line with the law, but they don't have those additional sanctions that a number of monitoring officers have highlighted, and a number of members from all political persuasions have highlighted in the past. I don't know whether you want to add anything to that, Assad, as the lawyer for the committee.
Yeah, well, the other thing I could say is I think is before that there were specific powers in legislation which were repealed by the Localism Act. So at the moment we just got the sanctions as actually what we've got in our constitution. Now, arguably, people say that they lack teeth, etc., etc. But until to reiterate, until the legislation is changed, which I think a lot of are hoping, I'm afraid the sanctions are going to be as they are.
Yeah, and just to echo Sylvia's point, if on page 20 it does clearly say at the bottom that there is no power to suspend or dismiss an elected councillor. You can bring that up if you wish. It's on page 20, but I just say that for anybody who wishes to have another look.
I know it's the bottom line somewhere where I've read that.
Well, it's also on page 20 of the, for the public, I'm thinking of the public, that they are aware that that's on page 20, potential outcomes from your complaint. It clearly states that that is not something within our gift. So when members of the public who put in a complaint will be aware of what outcomes are available. So it is out there, isn't there?
I think it's worth mentioning, Chair, by the way, it's Paul Fletcher again.
Thank you.
They can be suspended by their own party, can't they?
That's a different, yeah, of course, that's a good point, yeah.
Chair, the other thing I would mention is although there's no power of suspension, there are sort of criminal offences where failure to disclose interest, things like that. So they are, but they are very extreme cases, and I think there's only been few successful prosecutions nationally that I know of.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's I'm sure we'll have this discussion every time there's a review. I know the Local Government Association have had a number of meetings that myself, Assad and David have attended, and they are very keen on, explaining some of the conduct issues, particularly on social media, etc. So it is something I'll try and pick up at some of the next sessions that are organised about why is there no powers. I'm not sure whether that'll change anything or not, but we are where we are, and we're going to do what we can to the best of our abilities. Any other questions, comments, proposals to the amendments? If not, what I'd like to formally recommend is option 1A.
Seconded.
Thank you, Sylvia. And I take that as a unanimous.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you. I think if there's nothing further. Councillor Cohen, that's agreed. Thank you. If anybody needs to say anything at this point before I formally close the meeting, is there anything that we need to urgently comment on? Question, Sylvia.
I think it's on this agenda. Weren't we asked to do something about the officers consulting the group leaders on a more regular basis? I would be suggesting perhaps that was unnecessary, but isn't it something that you wanted that feedback tonight, or have I read it on a different report?
I haven't discussed this with David. David hasn't flagged that in our pre-meeting, but I'm happy if it depends on David. Do you want to come in on that?
Yes,
yeah.
Is this there is a recommendation within the 15 recommendations that there is a regular meeting takes place between the monitoring officer. It's in the papers. I'm wondering whether it's that.
Is that what you're referring
Yes,
to?
I've read that, and correct me, David, it's difficult when I've not got the papers in front of me, but from memory, my first impression was that the frequency that was perhaps being suggested would be not the best use of resources. That, you know, you already do this. Is it once in the year, or you already do it to a degree that didn't alarm me? I'm just going back to memory of what I'd read, and my first inkling was that it seemed unnecessary to have regular meetings with group leaders.
Yes, it's actually.
Am I on the right lines? It is this report where I've read it.
It is this report you've read it. It's on page 31, Chair and members.
Got it.
It relates to best practice recommendation 15, which states that, for those listening, best practice recommendation 15 states senior officers should meet regularly with political group leaders or group whips to discuss standards issues. And the comment that I've added there is that that's not the position we currently have, as we only raise it by incident.
Yeah.
So basically, Councillor Little is absolutely right. What I'm just asking tonight is that what is your view of that as my committee and advisory committee for the monitoring officer, in terms of how regular would you want regular to be? Because there's no definition in that best practice recommendation. It just says meet regularly. My suggestion would be, if it to suggest something so that you've got an option, that I should meet once a year with political groups and report on any issues through that year. That's just my first thought.
Okay. Any comments and thoughts on that? I mean, there's a question from Ron.
No, I mean, regularity, once a year can be regular, can't it? So no, I think it's appropriate to perhaps have a review between the officers and the group officers, the council officers and the group officers once a year, just to review things. It's quite a sensible one, so yeah. I endorse what David has suggested.
And there's just one more to that. Obviously, the once a year review, but also, obviously, if incidents arise, we retain that position of updating if incidents do arise.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be correct, Chair.
Yeah,
yes.
That's. I just want to make sure we're not. Yeah, thank you. I think unless members indicate they've got any issues with any of the recommendations, we have gone through these together, so it shouldn't be new information. We've developed those in red in discussions, various discussions we've had via this meeting such as this, and also by email options where members have been emailed. If there's no major issue, I think, David, Assad, I'll give you the last word on this item. Is there anything else you wish to flag up?
Chair, no, my understanding is that the committee have moved and agreed the option 1A, and what will happen next is that a report will be prepared for you, Chair, to take to the council forum in March to recommend the council formally adopt 1A, and in the intervening weeks we will prepare the relevant changes to the constitution that would be required, subject to full council forum agreeing your recommendation tonight.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? I'm conscious of our independent persons who I can't see if they wish to add anything further. And if not, I think that's everything on the agenda for tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I take there's no more comments. You can remove the screen share if you wish, so I can see people again. Assad. And thank you. So thank you, everybody, and also thank you, Miranda, as well. We'll look forward to seeing and hearing from you more, and obviously our existing independent persons as well, Paul. Thank you very much. And other than that, I wish you a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sylvia. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks, Neil.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye.